Hi, welcome to Words versus Words with Friends. This is a fun, interactive podcast where we challenge your mind and perspective using everyday words and phrases. I'm your host, Jolene Santiago, and I have my co-host here, Shamika Montgomery.
Hey y'all, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Words versus Words with Friends is a podcast where we want to encourage you to create dialogue and to also help you think outside the box. Tonight's words are obligation versus expectation, and if we could get those definitions. So obligation is an act or course of action to which a person is morally or legally bound, a duty or commitment, a debt of gratitude for a service or favor. An expectation is a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future, a belief that someone will or should achieve something.
Okay, so when we think about obligation, I think of it's something that something. I apologize. Being morally or legally bound. So if I'm morally or legally bound to do something, that means like I have to do it. I'm obligated to do it. For example, like paying bills. When I get a loan and I sign off on that loan, my name is on that loan. I am obligated to pay that loan.
Mm-hmm. So also, so with obligation, it's the act of you're legally bound to. So let's just do an example. So let's just say you have a guy who asks a girl out on a date. Do you think that he is obligated to pay, or do you think he's expected to pay?
Well, I think it just all depends. So for me, when I just brought up that loan, right? A loan is something that you have to pay on. You're obligated. You're legally or morally bound to do it. I think when a guy is paying for like a meal or something, I'm on a date and he's paying for a meal, I don't think that he's obligated to do it. It's not written. It's not anything written that says that he has to pay for it. I think now, could he be expected to pay it for it? I mean, I'm thinking if he asked me out on a date, right? You're asking me on a date. I think the first date, I mean, I would expect for you to pay for it.
Well, I mean, that expectation, I think sometimes it depends on, and when we talk about expectation, sometimes I think it depends on maybe today's society. Because I think back in the day, if a guy were to ask you out, I do think that he was expected to pay, because I feel like men in chivalry, But these days, I kind of feel like it's a little bit different, because you have so many women who are independent and they will pay for their own. So, and they come prepared to pay for their own. Sometimes they even pay for both people, them and the guy. So I think that it just depends on maybe the time frame, maybe.
Or the upbringing, like you said. Monica Rivers, thank you so much for your comment. If he asks me out, it's an unwritten code that he is obligated to pay. That's what I'm expecting. Okay, so yeah, so obligated, you're expecting him to pay it. I mean, I totally agree. If he asks me out, yeah, you're going to pay for my meal. Should I expect it all the time? Should I expect it every single time? So if he's asking me out like, this week and next week and again the following week, am I going to expect for him to pay every single time? And so for me, because he asked me out, yeah, I'm going to expect it because you asked me out on a date.
Well, I can see that. And Jen Born Again says expected to pay. Thank you, Jen, for your comment tonight. We thank you again for joining us on our second episode. And we ask that you would just chime in and give us your thoughts and opinions on these two words.
But Shamika, but what if the other person, I mean, so you brought up a good point about, a woman can pay as well, or they both can pay, just depending. But what if she makes more money than him? Would it be an expectation for her to pay because she makes more money? She has more, bringing home more income. Would that be an expectation placed on her?
Well, I mean, she might be expected to pay, but I just think that if he was the one that asked her out, then to me, I feel like that he should pay, because I do feel like it's very courteous, for a man to ask you out and to also pay as well. And I do think a lot of times we are going to expect you to pay, because you asked me out. Because I think sometimes guys, if they're like, okay, well, if the woman asks me out, then she should pay. And I think in 2022, it just goes both ways. I don't think that men are just necessarily expected to these days like they used to back in the day. And I think that sometimes, I'm not going to say that a woman would get offended, if she wasn't able to pay. But I think sometimes women, we are so independent, we come prepared. So, just in case he doesn't pay or doesn't have the funds, we make sure that we're taken care of and he doesn't have to worry about it.
I think sometimes as a woman, I think sometimes our expectations might be a little bit too high of men, where they're, and I was thinking about this earlier too, did I do my son an injustice by not preparing him for like the dating world? I laugh because I'm a single parent and I raised him as a single parent. But then when I think about everything that maybe women have placed on men as far as expectations, they're expected to pay the meal, or they're expected to, another example, getting proposed to, when a man is proposing to a woman, is he expected to pay for a very expensive ring because he feels the woman is expected to get something that's very expensive and very flashy, so I feel like sometimes our expectations, our men, are placed a little bit too high at a higher standard than I think that they should.
Well, I don't agree with that, because men, we should place those standards and expectations on them, because we teach them how to treat us. We teach them what it is that we want and what we desire. So I do think that sometimes, when we place those expectations on men, that is valid, because I feel like sometimes men can just slack off and just try to get away with the bare minimum.
But what if he can only afford? So like he has a job working at McDonald's or something, and there's nothing wrong with that, minimum wage job, But what if he can only afford like a $100 ring? I mean, should he feel forced or expected to, because he might just say, hey, I can't propose now because I can't afford it. So should that be an expectation that we place on him because his wallet can't afford it?
Well, I don't think it's not. And I think it really just depends on who the woman is, because I do feel like some women are okay with that. Some women are okay with the fact that you went out yourself personally and you found a ring for me, regardless of how much it costs. Some women are okay with that. And to me, I'm more sentimental. So I wouldn't really care how much they spend on it. It was a simple fact that they picked it out themselves. They thought it would be something that I would like. So for me, I would love that and I wouldn't have an issue. But some women, they are going to have an issue, because they feel like not only is this ring for me, but I'm also got to show it to all my friends. Be like, girl, look at this rock he done got me. Girl, he spent all his little check on my ring. And so a lot of times the ring isn't even for us, sad to say. Sometimes it's just for show, so we can show people, hey, look what my man can do. Let me see your rock. So I think a lot of times it's not even about that. It's what we want to present to other people.
And Monica Rivers says she disagrees. She says men have very high expectations of us. We have not changed that. Oh, okay. So I see it from the standpoint where women have high, because I've seen women had very high expectations of men, and I don't accept that ring. Or as a matter of fact, I'm gonna go buy my own ring because I can afford it and he can't. And so whereas some women do believe that men's expectations are that they're higher of us, our expectations are higher. So I
Mhm.
totally get that. I can totally see that. Hmm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what would be some example for those in the chat room? What would be some examples? Monica Rivers, could you elaborate on that a little bit more? High expectations that men have of us. Do you have some examples? So, so yeah, I mean, and at times, we feel forced that to have to meet those expectations. Sometimes, and it's not just, in relationships. It's just either it's with family members too, it's with friends as well. And
Mhm.
sometimes we feel obligated in doing certain things because we feel that we have to meet those needs, those expectations of the other person.
Yeah, and when you bring up family obligations, so one thing that comes to my mind is if you have maybe an elder in the family who passes away, and let's just say they were sick for the last year of their life. I think sometimes certain family members are expected to take care of them. They're expected to be there, and you might have 4 or 5 siblings, but maybe they're expecting the oldest one, because the oldest one sometimes they say is more responsible. That's not always true, but maybe they expect that person to take care of the relative because they are the oldest. And then when the relative passes away, a lot of times there's that fight for the money and, and possessions, which is really sad. But I think sometimes, those family obligations people do have as well.
Hmm. Thank you, Monica Rivers. She tuned back in with us and gave us an example. She said men expect us to cook, clean, bear children, and keep a full time job as well, along with meeting all of his needs as well. So it's a lot. So even just men working, some men believe, even just so women believe, and I think it just really just depends on your upbringing or your culture, whereas men feel that they go to work and that they're doing what they're required to do. They're meeting those standards of family, and doing their responsibility. And so they feel that anything within the household they believe is the woman's job and their responsibility.
Yeah, and I think sometimes is they can be considered the old school men because back in the day, the men did expect that. I think they do sometimes now, but I don't think as much because everything has changed and our roles have changed. And women have become so independent. And so it's not, even if he expects that, a lot of women are just gonna be like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, why don't you cook and clean and watch the kids and do the laundry? Why don't you be a stay-at-home dad? So I think the roles have changed over the years as well.
That's so good. That's so true. Hey, we're gonna go to a commercial. We definitely appreciate your feedback, your views, your perspectives. We want them to keep coming as we go to this commercial break. Thank you for joining in Words versus Words with Friends, and we will be right back.
Hey y'all, thank you so much for tuning in tonight, and we really hope you're enjoying this episode. We would love for you to join us here on Facebook, YouTube, and Spreaker every Friday at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time.
We encourage you to participate in our live chat rooms and to share your ideas and perspectives during the live show. Don't forget to go to next15podcast.com and tell us how we're doing. You can also catch up on future episodes of Words versus Words with Friends.
You can also check out past episodes of the Next 15 podcast show and Biblically Speaking with Trey North. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Now let's get back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us on Words versus Words with Friends. We're talking about expectations and obligations. We definitely appreciate your feedback and your perspectives. We encourage you to go ahead and drop some comments in the chat. And we definitely want to hear what you have to say. Shamika, you were talking about before the commercial about those expectations that we have within our families. And having a loved one who maybe has passed away. And so a lot of the times the older child is expected to take care of pretty much everything, the arrangements and everything, make sure everything in the family is running smoothly. I totally get that. I'm the oldest, and when my father had passed away, I stepped up and I took care of a lot of the responsibilities.
Yes, and I'm the oldest as well, and so I also feel a responsibility as well, just to even be an example to my other siblings. And when we talk about expectations, it's a lot to put on a person. Not just talking about the arrangements of a loved one, but just those expectations sometimes that are even silent. I think sometimes we have expectations that we feel are put on us that really aren't. I know that I have kind of dealt with that myself. And
Mhm.
so being this age at 42, it's kind of like, were those expectations really placed on me? Or did I just assume that they were? And so now I'm having to kind of work through that, and trying to decide, like, hey, who am I? What am I expected to do? Am I being a good example for my siblings?
So when we talk about family members, so let's go ahead and get into that a little bit more. What are we obligated to do with our families? I look at and you may disagree with me, but as far as obligated, I believe that there is a certain point, and I think a lot of times we get confused between obligation and expectation. So, for example, I am obligated. That means I am morally and legally bound to take care of my children. If I have children that are young children under the age of 18, you are legally bound to take care of your children. Now, as far as expectations, I'm expected to get a job and to be able to take care of them. But some would debate, or maybe have other opinions as to what expectations maybe the mother or the father may have as far as taking care of the children. So for me, I feel that it's important that it's an expectation that you should get a job. You should. It doesn't matter what type of job you have, but you should get one, whether it be minimum wage, but you're out there and you're trying to take care of your kids.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, yeah, you have that obligation, but sometimes those kids' expectations are really high. They don't just want some sneakers, they want the Jordans, they want the latest Jordans. They don't want a gaming system, they want the newest gaming system. And sometimes they have those expectations, because of the influences of their friends at school, maybe. Oh, well, Billy got this and he got the latest. Why can't you get me that? And they're expecting that instead
Mhm.
of just being grateful for what it is that they have.
But you know what, Shamika, there's some family members, or that it was felt like the parents had to be obligated in getting those things, because there are some people who believe in, let me show people how much money I have by buying all of these. Let me have the best car, let me get the best clothes, let me get the best shoes, let me get the best of everything. And so they feel that they are obligated or expected to do that. Whereas, and I don't know if it's the upbringing, it could be socioeconomic status, it can be a lot of different factors that play a part with that.
And do you think that expectations may be changed with time? Um, like, just because we're in 2022, do you think there are examples of expectations that used to be back in the day but aren't now?
Oh, I think definitely. I think, like, okay, cell phones is a big one. So, kids are expected these days to have a cell phone, and parents feel obligated in giving them, you know, the cell phone. So I think that in that it's both an obligation and an expectation. But
Mhm.
whereas when I grew up, we didn't have cell phones. That wasn't something. When I got older, I became a teenager. I bought my own cell phone, so it was never an expectation in my family. But these days, I definitely see that right now. Kids are um, expecting their parents to buy these cell phones for them.
They are expecting that, because I think just with today's society, a lot of times parents just want to make sure that their kids are okay, and making sure that they can track them and see what's going on with them. So that is, I think, an expectation, especially if their other friends have it as well. They don't want to feel left out, and so they want the newest gadget and the newest phone.
Hmm. Monica Rivers, thank you once again for your comment. She said, "In my perspective, we should serve our family out of love and not obligation, because obligation is subjective. Obligation is based on perspective." Thank you so
Mhm.
much for that. I kind of see it a little different. I believe that expectation is based on perspective, because a lot of the times when we place expectations on people, so for example, I may expect somebody to do something for me, and then it's not done in return. You know what I mean? So I'm expecting you to jump right away when I tell you to. Like, I need to go to the store and I expect for you to jump, but you don't do that for me. So I believe that's kind of like where I see it can be based on somebody's perspective, where they don't feel that the expectation is as important. I do have a friend that says, my emergency is not your emergency. And so sometimes we place those expectations because, hey, I feel it's important, so I feel it's an expectation.
Okay, so let me ask you this with this scenario. So if you have a husband and a wife, is he obligated not to cheat, or is he expected not to cheat?
That's a good one. I think legally and morally, he is obligated not to cheat. Man, that's tough. 'Cause I think like you're legally bound, but I could see where it could be. Let me go ahead and hear your thoughts on that. Let me go ahead and hear what you got to say before I jump the gun.
I have to say that he's expected because he is the leader of the household. So he is the example for the kids in the household and for other people in the family. So yeah, that is a definite expectation, because I expect for you to be faithful to me just like you expect me to be faithful to you. So yeah, that is a high expectation. I think probably on the top of the list, because out of all the people in the world, you chose me and I chose you. So yeah, I expect for you not to step out on me or be unfaithful, because I'm gonna do the very same thing.
Okay, well, what do we think about happiness? Obligation or expectation? Like, do I expect my husband or boyfriend, girlfriend, do I expect them to make me happy? Is it expectation or is it an obligation?
What do you think?
I'm gonna say I would say an expectation. I would think that if you're with me, then I would expect that you would somehow make me happy, or at least put in some type of effort to make me happy.
But my thing is, I don't know that a person can actually make you happy, though, because I feel like happiness is an emotion, and those emotions are fleeting and they're fickle. So, I think that happiness comes from inside. I think people can do things maybe, to help you be happy or in a better mood. But actual happiness, I don't know that another person is really in control of that. I think it's more of an internal thing.
So you're saying like not placing that responsibility on the other person. The other person shouldn't be responsible for your happiness.
Because I mean, one day if you bring me flowers and that's happiness for me, and then the next day you bring me chocolate and that's not happy, you know what I mean? Like, it could change, over time. So I just think the happiness, it comes from within a person, and it's something that can change and go back and forth.
That's true. You brought me flowers one day, right? We got into an argument. You try to bring me flowers the next day. I'm not going to be so happy about it. I don't want your flowers. I want an apology.
Thank you, because you did something real bad. And so them flowers ain't fit to do nothing but get on my nerves and die. And I have to water them and do all sorts of stuff. No, that's not going to work.
So we have our own expectations, right? Like, I expect an apology. Like, that's something that I expect from you. If we just had an argument, hey, these are certain things that I expect from you in a relationship. I think it's very important that we set those expectations are very clear, not only just with the person we're dating, but also with our family members, and also, with people around us, even at the job too, setting those expectations. And then two, not placing them at such a high standard that we look at them as if they can't make any mistakes.
Yeah, and we do. We have to show grace and we have to show mercy. But I think expectations sometimes can be boundaries too. And we have to set those boundaries for ourselves, whether it's family, friends, or even coworkers. Because like we talked before, if you don't set those boundaries, people will step to you. They will cross the line. They will try you. So you have to set those boundaries and expectations of how you want to be treated. Yeah.
This is really good. Obligation and expectation. Yeah, definitely. You brought up the job as well. Yeah, there's, you're obligated once you sign or accept that position. I think you are obligated to fulfill your duties on the job. You are expected to show up to work every day. You're expecting that check, but your employer is also expecting you to do your job.
Exactly, because you signed your name on the contract and you agreed to the terms, so you are obligated to fulfill your duty in your contract. And then you are also expected to come to work on time, to follow the rules, and to be a good employee as well.
So what happens when we don't meet those expectations?
When we don't make those expectations, you probably supposed to get that pink slip that they used to call it. I don't know if they still call it that, because everything's virtual now, so I don't know if you still get a pink slip. But yeah, you supposed to be out looking for another job, because they not trying to hear it, especially now in 2022, because there's so many jobs, so many people who don't have jobs. So yeah, they don't have time to play with you.
Yeah, but you can't give your family members and your friends a pink slip.
You know what?
Or can you?
You know what? You know what? Sometimes you have to, just to protect your peace. Sometimes you have to give them that pink slip, even though you don't want to. You might just have to do that. Yeah.
And I think too, communicate. Obligation is not something that we talk about very often. Just, we always place the emphasis on expectations, but when it comes to obligation, a lot of us don't really know what that means, or really what are the parameters, or what are the, the barriers of what an obligation is. And so many, we don't know. And so many times we just really get confused as to, what am I obligated to do? What am I expected to do in this situation or with the people around us?
Yeah, because even with obligation, there are like moral obligations. And so I just kind of wonder what those are, or who even determines, like, how do you decide what is morally right or wrong? I mean, I know for me, I would use the word, the Bible, to know what is right or wrong. But I think sometimes that's difficult for people to decide what is morally right or wrong and what they're obligated to do morally.
That's so true. Mariah had a comment. She said, right, you can give them the pink slip and still love them. That's so very true. That's true. For your own peace, your own peace of mind, and sometimes we have to do that and just let them know, hey, these are my expectations. And if you don't meet those expectations, I'm sorry, there's an alternative. There's another thing that you can do, whether it's your children. Hey, I had to do that myself. Hey, you're not cleaning your room. You're not meeting your expectations. I'm sorry. I love you, but you can stay home, get a job, or you can go to college. I love you, son. But I let him, and that's a good thing about it, is that I let him choose. He had a choice, which was good. It wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna kick you out, I'm gonna throw you out, So I put it back on him.
At least he did have a choice. Yeah, at least he had a choice, and you gave him a choice, because some parents are like, you're not supposed to get no choice. This is what you're supposed to do, and I need you to do it. They don't really have a choice. So you're nice. You're nice. You at least gave him an option, and you didn't just throw his stuff out on the street, when he came home. So
that's true. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. So he moved out and went to college. So he made a good choice.
He did.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And so yeah, when we think of there's just one thing I just wanted to talk about real quick, because we all go through we go to the doctors, one time or another. And so a lot of the times we place doctors at a very, very high standard or expectation. I feel sometimes too high, whereas sometimes we question, did the doctor do the job? Did the doctor fulfill what he needed to do? And sure, doctors have a legal and moral obligation to treat patients, but when they don't meet that expectation, there are certain repercussions that are taken, or lawsuits, or, some type of consequences. But, years ago when I went through a miscarriage, I had a miscarriage several years ago. And I kept questioning, like, this doctor didn't do all that he could do. He didn't do it. And I just kept going over it in my mind. Yeah, he was obligated. But then it's like, I had to think about, am I placing him at too much of a high standard? I was like, oh, I want these extra tests done. I want to find out, why didn't the baby survive? I want you to do this. I want you to do that. And I was trying to seek legal counsel and all that. And so I had to get to the point, for my peace of mind, was that, hey, he's a man, he, yes, is obligated, but there's a certain point that if he can't do something or meet that expectation, then you have to kind of put it aside. I don't know if you had to go through anything, when it comes to the medical field, but I mean, that's something that I was really reflecting upon, is that, I had to put it aside, and I had to say, you know what, I had to forgive the doctor and say, you know what, the doctor tried his best and everything that he could do, and put it
But
out of my hands.
But I do think that we are supposed to have those expectations. Yes, he is obligated, but even you as a person, he is expected to show concern, to do whatever it is that he can do to assist. So I think those expectations are valid. And what's really sad is in today's society, like, you really have to be your own advocate when it comes to your health. It's kind of sad because I feel like a lot of times physicians don't have that bedside manner like they used to. A lot of times it's just all about money now. It's about numbers. And they really aren't trying to hear what you're trying to say. So that is very difficult when you go through something like that. And I'm sorry that you did. I know that's extremely difficult, especially when you want to know why, and you feel like, what's going on, like what happened. You want those answers. Mm-hmm. And to me, you have a right. You have a right to ask for those tests. And, to me, I would think, I would hope that they would suggest it, or, go past what you're asking for, just to help you, have a peace of mind. But a lot of times, physicians, they don't do that. And when you find a good one, it's a blessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but I get what you're saying. I totally do. But I think I put too much of a high expectation. We thank you guys for your comments and your feedback. If you want to join in, I mean, your perspective of expectation versus obligation. I mean, this is really good. We really enjoyed hearing what you had to say, and we just want to just keep it coming. Share this page. So if you guys have a scenario that you want to share, or even if you have extra words or words that you want to share, for Words versus Words with Friends, we just really want you to, you can drop it in the chat right now, or you can always go to next15podcast.com. You can go to our Facebook page. You can leave some there. It's WvsWWF on our Facebook page. So we thank you so much for joining us this evening. You can, like I said, go to our Facebook page. You can also hear us. We're here every Friday at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We would love for you to come back and join us next week on Words versus Words with Friends. So we will see you then. We'll see you next week. You've been watching Words versus Words with Friends podcast, brought to you by Next 15 Podcast Productions. If you would like to support the podcast, go to next15podcast.com and click the Buy Me Coffee tab, where we will receive your donations of any size. Thank you in advance and for watching the podcast. We will see you next week.